Today we'll be in 1.3, Order of Operations. We're in our textbook on page 16. Textbook on page 16. All right, before we get started, and we just went over this acronym, you need to be familiar with this. You don't necessarily have to write it in your notes if you already know it, but you must know the order of operations. You've got to know it almost like the back of your hand, so when you look at a problem, you can immediately know which part of it you solve first. I think it's only natural for us to look at a problem and just solve it left to right. But with order of operations, it's not always the case. So we have to make sure that we solve it following this order. Parentheses, then exponents, multiplication and division, left to right, and addition and subtraction, left to right. So let's look at example 1. We're going to dive straight in. Using the order of operations to solve. I have 7 times 8 plus 10 divided by 2 minus 15. You could almost look at these like clusters. I have 7 times 8. I must multiply before I add. I must divide before I subtract. So whatever is being multiplied or divided by, I need to do that first. What's really important, guys, on these is that you do it almost in steps. So our first step is to take care of our multiplication and division. So what I'm going to do, so please go ahead. Oh, sorry. There we go. Now you can see it. So go ahead and write the first one out for me. 7 times 8 plus 10 divided by 2 minus 15. And the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and multiply. 7 times 8 is 56. I leave my addition sign because I haven't added anything yet. Now I need to go ahead and divide. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And I haven't subtracted yet. All right? Please don't try to do these in your head, because the more steps you try to do in your head, the more chance of making a mistake you're going to have. All right? Now that I've taken care of my multiplication and division, I'm just left with addition and subtraction. And when that's all I have left, I'm going to do it left to right. 56 plus 5 is 61. And 61 minus 15 is 46. So let's look at this next one. 4 times 3 is 12. I like to kind of just write it like this. And then 12 divided by 2 is 6. All right, and then 6 times 10 is 60. And then 60 times 2 is 120. And then 120 divided by 30 is
40.
Not 40, just 4. Okay, 120 divided by 3 would be 40. Okay, so I kind of just solve it step by step. Now, all of this right here, guys, you don't necessarily have to write it that way. All right, but what I want you to start getting in the habit of doing is solving it, writing it out step by step as you're solving it. Because if you try to do it all in your head, it might not work out so well. If you're doing it in your calculator, that's perfectly fine. You don't necessarily have to show your work. What I am looking for is that you're just showing different steps. Okay, so if there's more than one step, I'd like you to show that. All right, so in the next one, that'll be a little bit more along the lines of what I was just talking about. So let's look at this next one. There's a lot going on in this third problem. We have 5 squared plus 10 divided by 7 minus 12 divided by 4 plus 15. Okay, so we start by doing what? Okay, exponent. 5 squared is? 25. Okay, I got a typo. This should be 10 divided by 2. Sorry about that. Okay, so 25 plus, leave my plus. What's 10 divided by 2? 5. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Minus, so leave my minus in there. What's 12 divided by 4? 3 plus 15. All right, so 25 plus 5 is 30, minus 3 is 27, plus 15 is 42, and that's my answer. So guys, on this problem, I want to see this step. Okay, because I needed to get through at least that step to get to my answer. All right, so evaluate those exponents, multiply and divide. I want to see that step and then go ahead and add and subtract to get to your answer. All right, I want you to try the last one on your own. Walk me through it. What do I do first? What do I do first, guys? Just tell me. Divide 10 divided by 2 to get 5. 15 times 2 to get 30. Now I fill in the rest. 50 plus 5 plus 30 minus 12. All right, so we have 85 minus 12, which is 73. 73. If you got it wrong, do you see where you went wrong? Yeah. Yes, no, do you see where you went wrong? Yeah. All right, moving on. All right, so now let's look at example 2. This is going back to Garrett's question that he just asked a minute ago. How do I know, okay, parentheses. Well, don't I use parentheses to show multiplication? Yes. Yeah, I sure do. Okay, so let's look at the difference between the two for a second. So I have option A and option B. Only one of them is a true grouping symbol. So I've got this one, and I've got this one. Which one of these is parentheses, as I call it, a grouping symbol, and which one of them is not? What do you think? Raise your hand if you think that A is what I'm talking about, grouping symbol. Raise your hand if you think it's B. Okay, so why is it B instead of A? Can somebody explain it to me? Why is it B? Chloe?
Because it's saying you should do 17 minus 2.3 first before you, or 14 plus 6 first.
Okay. This one up here, B? Okay, yeah, that's what we're looking at. Okay, because I need to be able to simplify something that's in parentheses, right? Well, can I simplify 4? Can I simplify that? No, I can't simplify it. All I'm doing here is just multiplying. But in the second option, I have 3 times, well, I can simplify 5 plus 2 squared. What's 2 squared? 4. 5 plus 4 is 9. So I needed to simplify what was in my parentheses before I multiplied it by 3. Do you see the difference? So if what's in parentheses can be simplified, I have to do that before I do anything else. Does that make sense, guys? That's the difference between that and just parentheses around a number. All right, so let's go back to the example now. In example 2 now, I'm using grouping symbols. So like I just said, we need to simplify what's inside the parentheses before we multiply. Well, that's going to be fun. I have to deal with a decimal. What's 17 minus 2 3/10? That's going to be, what? Anybody figure it out? 14 and... 14.7. Okay, very good. 14 7/10. Now I just multiply it together, and what's 14 7/10 times 8? Anybody have it? All right, 117 6/10, and I boxed my answer. Okay, now in B, it's pretty clear that I can't really divide anything until I simplify everything in my numerator and everything in my denominator. So first I have to do 14 plus 6, which gives me 20. And then I divide it by 12 minus 7, which is 5. And then my answer is clearly 4. So anytime I'm solving something that involves a fraction or numerators and denominators, I need to make sure that I simplify everything on both sides before I divide. All right, last but not least, in this example, I've got brackets and parentheses. I always want to start with the grouping that is farthest inside, which is going to be my parentheses, farthest inside that grouping. So I start with 5 times 36 minus, and what's 13 plus 9? 22. All right. Now 36 minus 22 is 14. So 5 times 14 now gives me 70, which is my answer. All right, so we always start with our grouping that's farthest inside. Okay, so in this case we had parentheses inside a bracket, so I do parentheses and then I evaluate what's inside the bracket. All right, now in example 3, we're just throwing in some variables in there, so we're substituting the value for the variable before we solve. All right, so in 4a, go ahead and write in your notes. 4 times x plus y, that's my original problem. I need to make my substitution when x equals 2 and y equals 5. 4 times 2 plus 5. According to order of operations, I need to evaluate what's in parentheses first. So 4 times 7, which is 28. All right, you see how we're following the order of operations there. Okay, have another typo. This should be to the power of 2. That should be squared. All right, so now let's go ahead and substitute in on example B. 3 times 2 plus 5 squared. Again, I need to do parentheses first. So 3 times 7 squared. Now let me ask you this. Do I do 3 times 7 is 21 and then square it? Or do I square 7?
You square 7.
I need to square 7 to get 49. 3 times 49 gives me my answer 147. All right, that's why order of operations is so important. Last but not least, 3x plus y. So I have 3 times 2 plus 5. Multiply first. 6 plus 5 gives me 11. All right, so again, just more practice, more order of operations. The more we practice these, the better we'll get. If you understand that, that's everything you need to know for 1.3.